Today we were working on changing the automatic transmission fluid and filter in this 1989 Mercedes Benz 190E with the 2.6 liter 6-cylinder engine. Let's go ahead and get this car up in the air and get started. First things first, here are some of the tools and supplies that you're going to need for this job. You'll need about 6 to 7 quarts of ATF. This is Dexmerk, Dextron 3 equivalent. There's a lot of different fluids out there. You can pick your favorite. You'll need a transmission pan gasket. We don't use RTV, just the gasket. We'll need the automatic transmission filter. This is a man filter H2014. Some of the tools you're gonna need, you need a number 27 millimeter socket. I have a breaker bar. This is to move the engine around to get to the torque converter drain plug. You need a 13 millimeter socket with an extension. This is for the oil pan bolts themselves. And you'll also need a number 5 Allen or Allen key to drain the pan. I also have a light here, be able to see, and I'm sure there'll be some other tools and things that pop up. Once you have the car safely jacked up or put up on a lift, the first thing you want to do is go ahead and clean. I've already cleaned a little bit. It's still grimy, but this is a job where you don't want anything getting dirty in your transmission. So the cleaner that you can make it, the better, especially up top around all that. Before we pull out the drain pan bolts, there's a couple of them. You can see some here. We want to do a couple things. First of all, we want to rotate the engine so we can see the drain here. After that's done, we want to make sure that the car is in park, and then we want to drain the transmission here with our number 5 Allen. So let me go ahead and get that spun around and we'll get started. To be able to change the position of the torque converter, we're going to use our 27 millimeter socket and ratchet to put on the crank nut. If you have a fan shroud, you may need to remove that to be able to gain access onto the crank. But what you're going to do is you're just going to turn the engine, and as you turn the engine, you're going to peek over here and see if you can see that drain plug. It'll come around, you'll be able to see it. It'll show up right in this window. This is what the torque converter drain plug looks like when it shows up in this window. It is also a number 5 Allen, so you can use the same Allen key for this as well as the drain plug right here. Now you also want to make sure these are nice and clean. This one's pretty gross. I'm gonna use a pick to clean it out. This one here, super clean. You do not want to strip these, so make sure that they are good to go. With the drain plug removed, again a number 5 Allen, you want to make sure that you are catching your fluid into a safe container. Something that I like to do is measure how much comes out. So the oil pans you can get at AutoZone, places like that, have markings. I like to paint mine so I can see, but we will let this drain for a while and see how much we've caught, and then we'll do the same thing with the torque converter, catch into the same bucket. You also want to look at this just to inspect the fluid, see what's going on. Looks like there might be some shiny in mine, which is not great news, but we'll take a look. All right, so we have our pan off now, and you can see it's really still dripping a ton. When we pulled the pan off, there was about maybe half a quart-ish in there. It jumped from 5 close to 6 pretty fast. It was helpful to kind of drop it kind of slowly, and we could dump a lot of that into the pan. Something that helped me a little bit, but I actually got caught up on was this bracket right here. It's kind of hard to see, it's rusty. There we go. This bracket right here caught it, so it didn't want to, it held up on this side. So that was actually a good thing for not letting it come off too fast. Now you can see this is the filter. It's held on by 1 screw, 2 screws, and a 3rd screw right over there. So I'm gonna let this drip a little bit and There's definitely a lot of fluid still in that filter. So once this has started to slow down, I'll take that filter off too and just let it continue to drip. Now over here, I've got the pan, and you can see it's got a lot of fluid still in it. I'm gonna clean this up. There's a little bit of kind of dirt and maybe metal. It's normal from what I've seen. You also want to take a look at your seal. You can see mine here was separating for sure. And there's a lot of gunk on this, so this is definitely time to change the seal. I'm glad I'm doing it. Also, these tabs here, these are all to help make sure that you don't over tighten your pan. And they should all be flush. So once this is clean, you want to turn it over, put it on a flat surface, and it shouldn't rock back and forth. So we'll get it cleaned up while that drips and check on. All right, so this is the next day. I've gotten the pan all cleaned up. It's painted, which you can't see. It's completely clean on the inside. You gotta be really careful. I was using some of these blue lint-free towels, and maybe I'm just an idiot, but I had sprayed some brake clean in here to get some of the debris that had gotten in here, you know, as we were cleaning it out. And those lint-free towels, as soon as they touched that brake clean, just crumbled into tons of lint. So I wash it down with brake clean again, but make sure you're not leaving any particles. We want to try and get as much out as possible. The gasket is on the pan, so it's about ready to go in. I also went ahead and installed the new filter, 3 screws. I installed the torque converter drain plug and the new copper gasket. Stopped by the Mercedes dealership today and picked that up. So we are ready for this pan to go on and start refilling. All right, the oil pan is back on. So you can see here, I messed up my paint job a little bit. It was still a little tacky, and I set it down on some paper towels to clean out the inside, and I'm gonna have to go back and clean that up later. But everything is torqued to spec. I like to make paint marks to be able to visually reference not only if anything comes loose, but also to know that I torqued it, because I'm forgetful. So you can see a couple of the marks that I've made here. Now, the oil drain plug here is 14 Newton meters. The oil drain plug in the torque converter is also 14 Newton meters. I need to mark that one there, it looks like. But these drain plug, or the drain pan bolts, are actually 8 Newton meters, which is really not a lot of force. So make sure that you're being really careful that you're using a torque wrench so you can get an accurate reading. Of course, these do have tabs to help prevent the over tightening, but you know, you could still really zip them on there and mess things up. And you know, as you go, you want to make sure your seal looks okay, everything's looking good. So I'm pretty happy with this. So now it's time to let the car down and add some fluid. We'll get started on that next. We've got the car back on the ground now, so we're going to add transmission fluid. The factory manual says to add 4 liters of ATF through the dipstick, and 4 liters is about 4.27, 4.3 quarts. We're gonna remove the dipstick here. There's a black plastic little lock. Pull that forward, pull the dipstick out, put it on a clean lint-free rag. We'll put a tube down there and put about 4.3 quarts in with the engine off. The manual says once you've done that to go ahead and start the engine, put it in park and let it run, and then gradually add more fluid. It says as you add, kind of in between, to shift through the gears, park, reverse, neutral, drive, 3, 2, and then back up, and you want to pause in between each gear shift for just a couple of seconds. And the idea is you do that, then you just dip real quick and check. So one of the things that I've been taught is that you take your dipstick, get it in completely clean, get it most of the way in, and then pop it down real quick, pull it back out, so that way you can get a really accurate reading. This is all done in park with the engine running. So you want to be in a well-ventilated space, that kind of stuff. And you're going to do that until you have a full transmission. On the 722.3 transmission, the fluid capacity is 7.3 liters or 6.2 liters with an oil change. So I'm thinking we should be close to that 6.2 mark, especially I pulled out about 6 out of the car. So we're going to be somewhere in that ballpark to have a full transmission. So we will go ahead and get started filling this thing up. All right, so we are all finished now. Went ahead and added transmission fluid. Again, the way that the prescription is put in your 4 liters or about 4 1/3 quarts, and then slowly add transmission fluid as you get up close to that 6 liter mark, which is again 6.5 quarts, just a little over. I found that, I put in about 4.3, 4.5 quarts to start with. And then I let the engine run in park for about 2.5 minutes. One of the things is to get an accurate reading, your transmission temperature needs to be all the way hot. So that's something that's important, is to, let this warm up. That way you don't get an inaccurate reading. The factory manual talks about, if it's a colder temperature, how much lower it's going to read on the dipstick. And personally, I don't really want to figure out, what temperature is it and kind of play that guessing game. So I just let it run. If you were checking your transmission fluid normally from a stop, you would let it run for about 2 minutes. So that's what felt about right to me. And then I added fluid about half a quart at a time. I knew that I wasn't going to see very much until I got up close to 6 quarts. By the time that I put in that 6th quart, I finally was starting to see fluid at the bottom of the dipstick. But I think it is important to go through and do that slowly. They wouldn't tell us to do that otherwise, so there's definitely a reason. But it was nice to kind of get everything going. Again, back through the gears each time, check your fluid. And something to keep in mind, the space between the dipstick is just 1/3 of a liter. So it's not an entire liter, it's not a quart, it's just 1/3 of a liter. So it's not a whole lot at all. So once you get up to that 6, or even, close to that 6th liter or 6th quart, if you're measuring here in America, you want to start going slower. So I was putting in, a couple ounces at a time to try to make sure I hit it right on the money. And if anything, I'm just a little bit over. Not too worried about that. If you wanted to, you could siphon some out. There are tools for that, but I'm pretty happy with it as it is. So the only thing that's left is to go ahead and test drive it, make sure everything is okay. I'm going to put this back up in the air real quick, make sure I don't have any leaks or anything else goofy going on down there. Check all the linkages, everything like that. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Please be careful if you do this job yourself. Talk to a qualified professional, read the manual, do all those things. Don't trust what I say just because I said it. But anyway, have fun with your old Mercedes.